When I was on my work trip in South Korea, my Korean was not good enough to fully hold a conversation. I recognized many words, but often not enough to understand the full meaning. I usually replied in one-word sentences. 네, 감사합니다.
안녕하세요.
진짜?
그래?
맞아요.
지하철 어디에 있어요?
하셨어요. But something interesting happened. Those one-word sentences eventually became easy. More and more, I could communicate with staff and strangers. Words that I initially struggled with became familiar and automatic. When I got back to the US, my initial reaction was to use some of those Korean words, and I actually had to pause for half a second to remember to use English instead. Now, why is that? It's because I trained my active vocabulary. We have two types of vocabulary: passive vocabulary, what you can understand, and active vocabulary, what you can use. There is crossover between the two, but it takes effort to bring words from passive vocabulary over to active vocabulary. It's the difference between when you're speaking naturally and reflexively, and when you have to think about what comes next in your sentence. When you encounter a typical situation,
Hey, how are you?
You usually aren't thinking about it too deeply, and instead you reply on reflex, essentially with personal catchphrases. You're not constructing each sentence with grammar in mind. You're not going to the deepest recesses of your mind to answer, how is the weather today? No, you are relying on your reflexes. In other words, your active memory. Another example, let's say you attend a class and you fully understand everything that was taught. Does that mean that right at this moment you can go up and give that same lecture to that same efficiency? Maybe you'll do okay, but chances are you'll struggle without any prep, even though you fully understood everything. Languages are the same. Your ability to understand does not fully translate to your ability to do unless you put in the prep. So, how to put in the prep? Generally speaking, you get good at what you do. So if you want to get better at speaking lots of different sentences off the cuff, then you need to practice speaking lots of different sentences off the cuff. Ideally, you do this with a conversational partner to give you feedback, but even if you just started randomly monologuing, you would still get benefits and practice at monologuing. It would improve your ability to speak that language. But there is a catch. If you're not getting proper feedback of that monologue, then what you're practicing could actually be wrong. For example, let's say you want to practice your Spanish and you want a phrase that says, "Oh, that's so cool." But as you're practicing it, you misremember some words and you end up coming with the phrase, "Este verde es muy jefe." So you practice that phrase. You say it over and over again as you're doing your laundry. Este verde es muy jefe. Mowing your lawn. Este verde es muy jefe. Doing your chores. Este verde es muy jefe. Going to work. Este verde es muy jefe. Driving to school. Whatever you gotta do. Este verde es muy jefe. After a while, you get pretty comfortable at saying it without even thinking about it. You have successfully made it into your active vocabulary. Later on, you'll have a conversation that goes something like this. Hola, ¿viste el nuevo video de Jepper? Sí, este verde es muy jefe. Directly translated, that means this green is so boss, which in both languages is total nonsense. When I returned from my work trip in South Korea, I instinctually wanted to say, "네, 감사합니다." And it wasn't because I wanted to be hip or cool. It was literally my reaction because I had been doing that for over a month. And that is the secret to most of speaking a language. Intuition. You don't get there only by studying and getting lots of input, but doing the reps of output until these phrases become part of you. We all know that practicing speaking with natives is beneficial, but I'm here telling you that it's critical and you should be doing this as early on as you can. Beyond just simply, just use it, bro, there are other ways to help practice your active vocabulary. What you need to do is force yourself to recall the words until they become automatic. One way of doing this is flashcards, or you can try writing down in a journal. Even just having a texting partner where you don't rely on any outside help and you're just writing from your memory, from your instinct, will help solidify your ability to speak a language because it improves your ability to recall words. Like I said earlier, you can just monologue. You can start talking about anything and everything you see, describing the weather, the street, your house, anything in your target language. But it is important that you get feedback, because if you don't get feedback, you could be practicing wrong. Now, in the language learning community, there are those that say speaking too early reinforces poor pronunciation because you don't have a proper ear for the language yet. Honestly, I don't have a clear answer for that. Logically, it does make sense, but at the same time, I'm not so sure. First of all, you should not let fear of a bad accent stop you from trying to speak the language. Just trying at all is a massive win, which was my previous video, actually. Second, I've been watching anime years before I even thought about starting to learn Japanese, and yet I still have a pretty strong American accent. Clearly, there's a limit to what massive amounts of input can get you. Third, I started speaking Korean just 2 weeks after trying to learn, and so far it has not resulted in anyone telling me my accent's too difficult to understand or having any issues of miscommunication. If anything, being able to speak simple and one-word sentences reflexively in Korean has been essential for my work trip and has really enhanced my experience and the reaction that I get from the Koreans. Everybody has different abilities, and for some, accent and pronunciation will come harder or easier. Whether you speak right away or wait until later, you're probably going to have to watch countless videos on proper pronunciation anyway. Which is something, of course, that I do recommend doing, because a lot of pronunciation is just the physical ability to move your jaw and your tongue into the proper positions while speaking. A fundamental understanding of the differences between how we move our mouths in English versus Chinese really helped me a lot in improving my Chinese more than just simply listening did. You will have to do the work whether it's sooner or later, and the earlier you start, the earlier you'll have better speaking fluency in that language.